Joining us on the How Did You podcast today is Sean Rogers. You may know him as Spaceman. He's put his life and soul into lots of different esports. You may have seen him on Rocket League, Halo, even Call of Duty.
Yeah.
But how are you doing, Sean?
I'm okay, man. I am here to talk about esports, which is that's always a plus. That's literally all I do anytime, all day. So I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm not doing too bad. Obviously, 7:00 in the evening here. It's quite somewhat early for you, but how do you usually start your days?
Ooh, that's a good. I mean, it depends on I think really it depends on the time of year because talent have a very different cycle than I think normal people. Like we live our lives in like these weird chunks of weekend spaces. So when people ask me, what are you doing next week? I say, I need like a chunk of dates. I need like, what are you doing from the 12th to the 14th? I don't need, what are you doing at 7:00 on Wednesday? So, usually my days are, if I'm working, I'm up early and then I'll try to get a run in, do some prep, do the show, do some review and stuff after, and then I'm in bed by like 2 or 3 in the morning. But there are some days where I'm not awake till like 1 in the afternoon because it depends on the cycle. So my days are pretty boring, man. Like we work from home now, so I'm confined to my space. I try to get out and move and see the sun, but other than that, I live in this bubble of just esports. So it's not super exciting, man.
Well, I think what people don't understand is the fact of how much actually goes in to a commentator's day. Like you say, you start somewhat early, go on a run, and then you're finishing at what, 2, 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
It must get pretty tedious. But if you had to think about your favorite esport, I'm going to put you on the spot.
You mean person.
We've only just met, but I'm going to be mean. Halo,
can't believe this.
Rocket League, or COD.
That's really unfair. I mean, favorite's tough because I would say favorite probably, and I'm gonna make so many of my bosses mad. Probably Call of Duty because I mean that's where I got my start all those years ago, and that was one of the first. I mean, the first real esport I really saw briefly was Halo, but Call of Duty was the first one that kind of was like, oh, this is exactly what I want to do. And it was the first one that I followed extensively. So Call of Duty is probably my favorite because it's been my home for so long. But that's the thing. Every esport I do, they are my favorite, and I have to love what I do in the game. So like Halo, it's my favorite game of all time. Halo 3 is my favorite game of all time. So like doing Halo has been like, oh, this is my favorite thing to do. Doing Call of Duty because it's my favorite esport, it's my favorite thing to do. Doing Rocket League because it's just started happening and the game's taking off. It's my favorite thing to do. So even though Call of Duty is my answer, I promise all my bosses that may or may not see this that I love the game that I'm hired to do. So please keep me because I want to pay rent. So yeah, I love it, man.
Back then, you were more likely than not to be employed by Major League Gaming.
Yes.
Nowadays, Esports Engine has taken over Call of Duty.
Mm-hmm.
Do you personally believe that this would be a positive impact for Call of Duty?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, anybody who knows anything about Esports Engine knows that the core of that group is, Ethan and Adam and the entirety of that show, and Carter as well. Like there is not a person working in North American esports who hasn't in some way been impacted by what MLG did. And the core group of MLG that became EE that now is running COD is the same group that was running CWL for 10 years. So yeah, like when EE got back into the game, we're like, this is literally MLG, and they're running the very game that they helped keep alive for a decade. So yeah, I mean, as talent, as someone who got lucky enough to work with MLG at a point, and got to experience what MLG did with Halo and then did with Gears of War, and then did with Call of Duty. Yeah, dude, this has been a huge blessing for the scene for sure. And I think Activision is really happy that they have just a group that can be so dedicated to the game. And at this point, like it's easy when like, you know, your bosses trust you. So they're like, we can trust EE to do the job we need them to do. And EE knows how to make a good product. So yeah, dude, this is a really good time to be a COD fan for sure.
You speak about what it was like to be given a chance by MLG back in that time. Mm-hmm. But who was Sean when he was younger? Did he ever see himself becoming a Call of Duty commentator or a Rocket League commentator or even a Halo commentator? Was that an aspiration that you had since you were a child?
My biggest aspiration was to like have friends. So, you know, I was the nerd. I was the nerdy kid in, God, how long ago was this? When I was in middle school. I want to say that I got my kind of esports exposure when I was a freshman in high school. So I think from then on, I knew that I wanted to do esports. So I'm in that weird position of like when people say, you know, how long ago did you start doing esports, or when did you realize that that's what you want to do? I'm like, I was literally like 12 or 13. It's when I was like, oh, okay, you can like talk about video games and like that's a thing. And I was like, yeah, I want to do that. But I mean, I was a normal kid besides that because esports was a focus. As soon as I figured out that esports was a thing, that's what I wanted to do. But I understood at the time how to separate it from just like my normal life. So, you know, going to school, and I played sports from the time I was like 4 till through college. So like baseball was a huge part of my life. So I was playing baseball pretty competitively, and I was like, I'm not going to the majors. I could probably go to the minor leagues though. So I was playing baseball consistently through college. And, you know, outside of that and just having a normal life and stuff, I mean, that was all good. And I had time to figure out what kind of degree I wanted to get, what kind of field and academic stature I wanted to pursue. And I did that. But yeah, esports was the one thing that even with all of those things, everything was in service towards the esports side. So I was lucky. But that I was so young, and I was like, I want to do esports. Like that's 100 billion%. Yes, don't do that. So
you speak about the academic path that you'd taken, and you speak about also the minor/major baseball leagues.
Sure.
But obviously, esports is all around us. So let's throw it back into esports, and let's talk about the fact that you have a marketing degree.
Mm-hmm.
Challenges against kind of franchises. Who would you put personally, from what you've seen in your commentating, as the biggest threat or the biggest money matchup in a marketing way for challengers versus franchise?
Ooh, if we're talking about like the best matchup to sell like a title card, it's a good question. If we're looking, I would say if we were looking to last season, I'm going to use the end of last season for an example, just because this year we've had a bunch of different roster changes and players that were key got pulled up. And I think that this context works best as let's pick both in their prime and let's see how they compare. If we look to last season, looking kind of at like what Elevate did in Europe. Elevate was one of the most consistent teams in Europe, and you had big names that got picked up, like Hixie just got put onto a CDL spot. When you look at people like Gizmo, who just got picked up in Europe, and they had some of their championship runs near the end of the year. You look at Gizmo, you look at Josh, and you look at Harry. Like there were big names in Europe that I think Europe had a better team-oriented game. I don't even think that's an argument. And we've had discussions for months about who's the better region, NA, EU. NA was so heavily stacked individually, where, you know, you look at like a Wester versus a pro team. I think that would have been really interesting, where you had Glow Frosty and Saints and Prolude and Sparta at a time that were just like frying. But Challengers to Pro League's very different step. It's a very different step. And NA was very individual heavy, where EU was very team heavy. So, you know, I think in terms of the conversation, I would have loved to have seen at the end of last year when Champs was about to happen, I would have loved to have seen like Atlanta FaZe, because obviously, or like Toronto Ultra versus some of the better teams in NA. I would say like the early stage Wester team. The early stage Wester team in the start of Cold War they were like 24-0 in like scrims. Like they were slaughtering people. They just had a better read on the game early on, and they eventually made some roster changes, and, you know, and Venom bounced from team to team. But like Challengers players, I think we've proven over the last couple of months that Challengers players can get picked and put into the league and they can do well. I was saying for months that Pred was he was my number one in the world, but like Pred could be number one, number two, and everybody should be like looking at Pred because he's in Australia. They think, there's only 8 teams, so therefore the work that he does is diminished. But what it shows is that players from Australia and Europe are obviously just as good as the North American kids. So the fact that Challengers is kind of blown up in that sense of bringing validity to the skill that a lot of these players have. If we were looking at a title card matchup, I think like Atlanta FaZe versus Elevate would have been really interesting. I think Elevate would have got smoked, but it would have been fun to watch either way because Europe has a lot of good talent that didn't get recognized in the offseason. So I think that's my answer, but I was a big fan of Elevate last year. And I think that it would have been interesting to see them play a pro team like Toronto or Elevate or FaZe, excuse me.
During the off-season, we've seen the rise of multiple esports, mainly the HCS.
Yeah.
And you've had experience in working with the HCS and kind of surrounding Halo. Has there ever been an experience with Halo where you've gone, oh my God?
In a good way, yes. Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, like it's all been good. Like, and I think that, oh my God's more of like recently, because Halo has been kind of up and down. And I don't think that's controversial to say. Halo has been it's highs, it's had its lows, and now it's getting back on that swing. Again, a lot of thanks to EE, but also huge thanks to 343 that's been listening and the competitive team that's been listening to what players want, what fans want. I think my biggest like wow moment came 2019 and the start of it in January. It was at the time when HCS was kind of in this weird like purgatory between we're almost ready to get back into things, but not quite. Halo 5 had just kind of finished its competitive cycle. So we were going to stay on Halo 3 for like 2 years, and then Infinite was supposed to come out. And Halo 3 was one of the games that we were playing at that time. And we had played an HCS event in St. Louis, and it was in the early start of January, and we had like 230 teams there, and all the pro teams, all the pro players, all the content creators in this massive venue in St. Louis. And I remember the weekend, that Saturday, it snowed, and it snowed like 3 feet, and it snowed in, and we were stuck in the venue at like 8 a.m. Our call time's at 8 a.m. The players don't get there until after, but like, you come out of the hotel and you walk like up half a mile, you get to the venue, and we're sitting there, and it's like 8 a.m., 9 a.m. All the stations are up. We see Halo 3 on this massive screen in the venue. And we're just like looking around like old Xboxes and old TVs and like monitors. And we're snowed in inside a venue on a Saturday morning, and we're going to play Halo 3 all day. And I'm like, this is like that. At that point, I was like, wow, this is like the greatest thing of all time. I would say that was the one I was like, yeah, this hit for sure. But like the most recent event in Raleigh, like it was MLG running Halo, boom, that's it. And it was just like, yeah, you're sitting there like, wow, Halo's back. This is great. But yeah, personally, that event for me in St. Louis was not only because I was working it, but it was just like, wow, like this is my childhood. We're inside playing Halo 3 and it's snowing. This is great. So yeah, that was fun.
Let's talk about Raleigh. Obviously, it's kind of, it sounds silly to say, but it's put Halo finally back on the map.
Oh, it did. Yeah, for sure.
And we saw Formal join Sentinels.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel about that? Because obviously now he's hopping around a load of different teams, and as a caster point of view, that must have created some kind of storyline. So like when they played Optic and eliminated them and stuff like that. How was that as a caster?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, luckily for that event, I didn't have to worry too much about my professional input, because I could kind of just sit back and watch. And so like, obviously there are times when casters are like, in terms of storylines, it's sometimes harder to sell something than it is others. But for this instance, Formal, ditches SSG, and he's like, hey, I'm going to join Sentinels because of the whole World 2 situation. And immediately going in, I'm like, this is going to be the greatest thing of all time, because one, it's Formal. And if you're a fan of FPS on console, you probably know who Formal is.
Yeah.
Two, with kind of the way that his Cold War year ended, we're like, does he still have it? Three, because he's teaming up with friends of his. Four, the team he was on. And five, the fact that he's a former Halo champion. So like it was all perfect the way it came together. Then we're going into this event. It's the first kickoff for the event. And one of the biggest storylines is not that it's the kickoff. It's the fact that Formal is still on Optic Gaming, but he's playing for Sentinels with players that were formerly on Optic, and he's playing against Optic at this point, and we all wanted him to win. Like everybody wanted Sentinels to win, because we wanted Formal to succeed. So yeah, like I could just sit back and be like, this is like the greatest storyline ever. And watching him play and then play really well. And, he started struggling in the middle of the event. Then they play Optic and he starts popping off in the latter half of the series. And then game 5, he goes demon mode. And we're just sitting there like, this is literally the greatest thing ever. Yeah, dude, it was awesome. And I think that those kinds of things only happen when the event itself is worth watching. And Raleigh was worth watching because the production was great. The open bracket was like, it was like, you're back at the MLG event for Call of Duty or Halo. The open bracket's thriving. They have the right system for getting amateurs into the pro setting, and the pro teams were just playing really, really good Halo in a really good game. So that whole thing was like, it was like a story, like it was literally written for that to happen. We're like, dude, somebody started leaking the script of this event because this is great. But yeah, it was so much fun, man.
I can completely understand that. And we focused a lot on Call of Duty. Now we've made our way onto Halo. I guess, in a way, arguably, it's like your career.
Yeah.
But then most recently, you've been commentating Season 9, Season 10, and now even more Rocket League. Like you say, you got completely encompassed by esports.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And now to have the opportunity to cast Call of Duty to Halo to Rocket League, how does that feel?
Rocket League's been really tough, and not in a bad way. It's just it's a very different game than I think a lot of people realize. Like, you watch Rocket League and you think, okay, so you talk about the ball going back and forth and this and that. And that is true, but there's like two different things you have to kind of pay attention to. Obviously, number one is the narrative of where the ball is and how the players are in relation to it, which in and of itself is actually incredibly difficult because you don't want to sound like an idiot. So like it's a very different approach to commentary than I'd ever really been used to, because all I really did was shooters up until that point and some battle royales, but like shooters was like the main thing. So Rocket League was a different experience, but also you're required to be able to read the game as it's happening. And it's not like being able to read a hard point and understand where people are going to go. Like, players are making, on a small field, players are making 30 or 40 decisions every minute that are not just in the moment. They are to be staggered out over a 5-minute period. So like, it's a lot of how quickly can you read what's happening and what's about to happen. And then can you weave that into your commentary to where it doesn't sound like you're just talking about, oh, they did this, then they did that. And that. So yeah, I mean, for Call of Duty, it's a game that I've been casting for a decade, but that's hard in its own way because there's ways of polish that you're still getting even all these years later. Rocket League was probably one of the hardest games I've ever commentated and still working on it. And I tell people that. I say, like, Rocket League's, dude, it's amazing, but like I think people often underestimate how actually difficult it is to talk about that game because there is so much that happens. But I mean that game has been really, really fun. I kind of got trial by fire. We got thrown into it right when COVID happened. So we started season 9 and then we're learning, and then COVID happens. We all get shut down. We go back home. And from there, it's like, okay, finish season 9, then right to RLCS for season 10. And instead of you kind of just trying to figure it out, it's like you have 14 show days every single month for like 6 months. Go. So we were like every weekend we were just going and going and going. So we really just kind of were like thrown into it and just figured it out from there. But yeah, dude, I love Rocket League. It has been one of those games where I'm like, there are some days I'm sit back and I'm like, I swear I don't understand this game. And then you have to kind of reset, go back into it. You figure it out. But yeah, it's been one of those games that's very difficult. And I was surprised with how difficult it was to actually talk about it. So I love it though. I wouldn't trade it. It's great.
You speak about how difficult things can be to talk about certain games, but I'm going to be slightly mean again.
Do it. Bully me.
If you had to be mean and kind of break up a caster duo and put yourself in with somebody else for Call of Duty, Halo, and Rocket League, who would you put yourself with for each esport?
Oh, that's a mean question. God. All right. people would, you'd think that I would say like, oh, give me Miles, give me in Rocket League, give me Jorby, give me Wave Punk. In Halo, give me Puckett. Actually, I that is the exception. I would love to do Halo with Puckett because Puckett is like when I was growing up, that was my guy. So like when I saw him, I was like, that is the thing I want to do. So yes, Puckett would for sure. But with all the years you've been doing with all the years I've been doing this, when you start kind of getting in your specific role, like if you're doing play-by-play or color, you find that it's not just I want to cast with someone that I've admired for years. It's I want to cast with someone who obviously I admire, but I know that if they're doing the other job, that our chemistry would work. So looking at Call of Duty, obviously I would love to have cast with like Courage and Maven and Puckett at the time. But looking now, I think the only person I would split up, which is even weird, I think that just in terms of my own energy and the way I approach games and the way that I bounce off conversation wise, I think maybe me casting with Study, or, I've worked with Allie for, I want to say 3 or 4 years now. And, getting to kind of teach her some of the ropes and get her caught up and bring her up to speed on stuff. She was my analyst. I was play-by-play. So I have reps with her. So obviously, I would love to continue that, but it's weird because I look at Miles and Chance and like, obviously I want to cast with Chance at some point because he's a god, but I can't break them up because they're just, sometimes you just know your energy as a commentator. You just know what would work the best. And yeah, I look at situations like that where I think casting with someone like Study or Allie, where like we can have those really quick conversations and having that same rhythm. Yeah, for Call of Duty, definitely. For Halo, I already have my king, Clutch. When we did HCS, and every time I've basically done HCS, I've gotten to work with him, and I love the same thing. His energy and the way that we approach games. It's very easy for us to bounce off each other. I love working Halo with him because I love the play-by-play aspect of it, and his analysis. Not only his analysis gotten just a billion times more polished in the past year. Like the dude is killing it. But I love the way that he approaches analysis and conversation, and he does a very good job of like just knowing how to continue to mold a conversation as the game's going on. So Clutch for sure. I would love to cast with Walshy because I think I would break up Golden Boy and Walshy. I'm sorry, Alex. I would break him up because I love Walshy and he's awesome. Oh yeah, now while I'm here, I should always be a home wrecker. I'm breaking up Andy and Brav because I love. Did I say that right? I said Andy is Brav. I'm breaking up Onset and Bravo because I love them both. But again, same thing with Bravo, where I like energy wise, I'm like I love Andy as a person, and I think we would do something really cool. But to answer this very long-winded response for Rocket League, I actually got lucky enough. Same thing. I would want to cast with Wave, but I know that we do the same role, and it's a hard question, but we actually had one of our rotations 2 weeks ago, and we got it. And I was working with Stacks again, who was like a brother. But I saw on this caster sheet that we had like Corelli and Achieves, and Rocket League is unique because they like to switch up duos all the time. And Corelli is one of the people where, as an analyst, in terms of the way that, again, he approaches the game, I'm like, I know I would work really, really well with you. So I texted my boss and I was like, hey, I see that he's working with Achieves, but I want Corelli. I want him this weekend. I don't care what happens for other weekends. I want Corelli. So I got to work with Corelli, and we did a really good job. So yeah, in terms of breaking people up, it's tough because I think people think, oh, you just take the person that you like the most or the one you would want to do. But it's not that easy, because even if it's a goal, like, oh yeah, I'd love to cast with Puckett, but like, would we do as well as, obviously he'd do great, but like, it's not just all puzzle pieces fit together. Everything works differently. So I don't even know if that answered your question. I apologize about that. But yeah, dude, there's a lot of good talent. That's all I got. It's just a lot of good talent everywhere. So
you mentioned your quote unquote king and how you've shown Ali the ropes and everything like that. But do you personally have a role model? Would it be someone that's left COD, like say Matt that's now gone to Overwatch? Would it be golden boy, would it be Puckett?
Yeah.
Who do you look up to in the esports scene on a personal level?
Oh yeah, for sure. In terms of like and I call them the old heads, not because they're old, but because of like I was watching these guys when I was in high school and in college. So like obviously I'm like, yeah, that's them. Puckett for sure. He's always been Puckett and Golden Boy have been like my number ones forever. Puckett because when I first saw him, that's when I made the connection that you can dress up in a suit and do this as a business and be connected to esports. And I was like, that is what I want to do. So Puckett because of Puckett, I don't think people fully get how much Puckett influenced commentary wise, approach wise, and like esports wise. Like Puckett's like the Mount Rushmore of esports, and for sure. And in terms of somebody I've looked up to personally and being able to interact with him and work with him at events and cast with him, which was wild. From what he paved with MLG and from what he did from a commentary perspective, Puckett for sure. Golden Boy, who's a very good friend. In terms of, a dude when I had been on the scene is a relative word. I had been involved in esports since 2012, but I didn't really start getting the waves that I wanted. I didn't start kind of coming to the forefront until I would say like 2018. And so by that point, people start to kind of know who you are. And the Halo event I did in St. Louis was the first time I got to work with Golden Boy. And, from that moment, he was very like super supportive, super kind, super eager and willing to help with stuff. Always been someone I could like text and be like, hey man, I got a question or like advice or, just whether it was the scope of esports or personal life or whatever it is. Golden Boy's in that same realm where I watched him commentating COD and Black Ops 2. And I was like, this guy's awesome because when you look at people who are like role models in esports, you look at who are like the faces of esports. When you think of esports, like who is the face, who is the iconic person you could sell to a brand and be like, you want esports? This guy's esports. So Puckett, Golden Boy, and the both of them are like premier. They're both incredible. And as of recently, from the time that we met in 2019, Miles has been a really, really dope person. We met in Black Ops 4 when he was working with CWL. I got brought on to do CWL work and he was super awesome, super nice, and like really down to earth. Like what you see on stream is what you get in person. He is like that 24/7. And same thing with all of them. Like they're all super genuine, down to earth. And not only from like a mentor perspective, but watching him gets me better at doing my job. So like if there's like a golden trinity, like if we're doing COD, Halo, and Rocket League, those are like my three like that consistently get me up there. But I have been really blessed to work with in all these esports to work with people, like Blaze and Wave Punk and Jorby and Corelli, and everybody, and Andy and Bravo and Lottie and everybody in between from all these years. Like there's so many talented people in every single esport. And I love all of them. But in terms of longevity, those three have been the ones for me where I'm like, that's my triangle of like esports Mount Rushmore, So if I can make them, what's the word? Like look at my work and be like, wow, he's doing a good job. Then I'm happy. I can die happy at that point. Like, I don't care what happens. If they're happy with what I'm doing, I'm fine. So
I can completely understand why they are your top three because I myself started watching Call of Duty Black Ops 2 time where you'd have like your Puckets, your Fwiz, then obviously through being an intern came Courage and everybody like that. But Miles is a great guy, other than the fact that he leaked an episode recently. But if you had to envision where you would be in a year, where do you see yourself?
Hopefully still employed. I'm gonna knock on wood real quick.
But you just had a phone call, so
yeah, I'm fingers crossed. Hopefully, very much so. Hopefully, in a, it's a weird question. Just because like our lives are so random and just like you could have a week or 2 weeks where nothing happens, and then the next week you're doing something completely wild that you never thought. So I would say in a year's time, I think in terms of personal goals, I'd like to hit just kind of more of, I guess, the personal goals I set out for myself, which is more stability, obviously more production in terms of my own casting career, and just being more productive and kind of just hitting some of those small goals I've set, whether it's with Call of Duty or Rocket League or Halo, staying consistent on myself and making advancements in those fields. But really at this point, yeah, it's from where I'm sitting and where I'm at in my career. The only goal I really have in mind is, again, continuing to improve on what I do, and to be promoted in my respective field to specific positions, and to show that I can do what I do, and at that point, make enough money to pay the bills and keep the lights on. That's all it is. Like I'm very simple that way. So if I can continue to move up in my field and pay my bills, that's all I really care about for the next year. So unfortunately that's all I'm hoping for. But oh yeah, get back to land too, because like we've been inside for like 7 years, so that'd be nice if we could go back and hang with people. That'd be fun. So
wait, you've been smashing it since it began, really, and it's been nice to see you grow as a commentator, because obviously throughout the time that I've been watching esports, I've seen your career grow, and it really has grown, and I'm glad that it's been able to grow in a way that it has. Like you say, it'd be great to go back onto LAN. It'd be great to hopefully, fingers crossed, see a lot more opportunities for the people of Challengers League. But if you had to give someone, whether it be personal life or professional life, a bit of advice, what bit of advice would you give them?
I would tell basically anyone to, I would say if you're making your moves in esports, and to anybody who's doing it, number one, keep esports. Like if you want to pursue careers in esports, invest in yourself heavy, like invest in what you do. Don't be afraid to cold call, because that's one of the best ways to get jobs. But, stay realistic of where you're at. I think that's a big thing, is people often put a lot of their time into expecting things to kind of turn around within a year's time, which doesn't really happen. And that's life in general. Like, sometimes things work out and you get exactly what you've been trying to figure out within a month or two, or you get it within a year. But unless you were in my position where you knew like day one what it was you wanted to do, and like, you're like, okay, I'm from the time you're whatever till you're out of college, these are the years you have to figure it out. Unless you're in that spot, because at that point, just figure it out. Like that is like a golden parachute. If you're not in that point, obviously, if you want to pursue whether it's esports or something in general, like I tell people all the time, understand what inherently it is that your ladder will be, and your ladder is the obstacles in front of you that only you will really face. So again, some people will have overnight success. Some people it'll take them a year or two and they're exactly where they want to be. For others, like myself, my ladder was these are the barriers to entry, and these are the things you're going to have to figure out. And you kind of know immediately what will be in front of you when you try to figure it out. So be willing to fail, but if you can fail forwards, you're going to be better off than you were if you gave up. So, like there were 30 billion or so obstacles that I had to figure out before I could get to kind of where I was. But I was always, even if you run into the obstacle head on, you fall over. If you're falling over forward, you don't have to worry about that obstacle anymore, and you can just keep it going. So, like give yourself time to figure it out. Invest in yourself for sure, and if it's something you truly want to do, don't quit at the first sign of trouble. Like if you truly want to do something, you have to be willing to fail, and you have to be willing to use that to realize that one failure down means there's one less to go. So, I've seen a lot of people quit, whether it's professional careers or academic careers or esports careers. I've seen a lot of people give up on stuff after like the first couple of attempts or the first couple of things, when I think that they should be doing it, and they quit because it's too hard. And, it's frustrating because you don't want to see someone like give up like that. So I would say just trust in yourself to fail, which is a weird thing to say, but like, if you're failing, it means that not only you're not giving up, but you're doing more than what somebody else would be doing, and you're getting it out of the way. So if you can trust yourself to fail in that weird way, you'll be fine. So I think that's my advice. It's just like, you know, understand your road and don't be afraid to like hold an L, because we all hold an L from time to time. So, you know, figure it out.